Hey, Bridget,
Hi, Dave.
what's going on? How are you?
A whole lot.
Welcome to the first ever episode of the Soul Buffalo Earth Report Live. I'm so excited to have Bridget Croke from Closed Loop Partners, who's one of our dearest friends, most trusted advisors, and doing a lot of really incredibly cool stuff in circular economy and saving the planet. She's also one of the most badass rock climbers that I know. And so glad to have you, Bridget.
I appreciate that you know. It was about to be untrue.
I don't know that many rock climbers.
Well, then I'll take that claim.
So tell me a little bit about what you've been working on. Lots of stuff in the news. The Fast Company articles have come out. Lots of articles have come out about this Beyond the Bag program that you guys are spearheading, and about Algramo, which is one of your investments. Maybe to start, you just give a general overview of what Closed Loop Partners is all about, what Closed Loop Fund, just a little bit of history for people that may not know.
Sure. So Closed Loop Partners is an investment and innovation firm working to advance a more circular economy. We are about 6 years old. I've been there since day one almost. So it's been a ride. And so we have two arms. We have our investment arm where we're investing in infrastructure and emerging technology and business models that are all relevant in accelerating a circular economy. And we have been kind of investing in infrastructure for almost 6 years now, with a lot of corporate partners who've invested in our funds to be able to deploy that capital into the recycling needed to get that material back in their supply chains. And then over the last, 3 years ago, we launched a venture fund where we began investing in earlier stage technologies like Algramo, which we're going to talk about, and residential scale anaerobic digestion and material science, all kinds of cool things, investments that we made there.
Residential scale anaerobic digestion.
Yeah. So, as you probably know, food waste, while we talk a lot about plastics, food waste and organics is a huge waste and climate issue. And our infrastructure around organics recovery, food waste, other kinds of yard waste, and commercial scale organic material is very minimal, the infrastructure that exists. That said, there's kind of two primary types of infrastructure there. There's composting, which we probably all are familiar with. And then the second second way to recover that material in a positive way is anaerobic digestion, where it goes into this machine and turns basically into energy. You turn the food waste into energy, and there's some output at the end that is either a solid or liquid that can go into our nutrients that can go into other applications. But that energy capture is really important and can keep that make sure that we're not moving waste long distances and transporting that, but actually utilizing it locally and not needing to create waste or energy in other ways. But that said, it's generally at a very large scale. It's huge infrastructure. So we've invested in a company called Home Biogas, which is a very small scale, couple $100 a unit, used globally to turn household food waste back into energy that can be used for your cook stove or other things. So it kind of solves energy insecurity and the problem with food waste.
That's very cool.
All right, long diversion.
So
good question.
The Closed Loop Fund was the sort of the initial sort of catalyst where you got some of the top organizations, the top companies in the world to invest to really help build recycling infrastructure.
That's right. And now actually we're raising another fund because we've been giving below market rate debt through that fund to recycling companies, municipalities, which continues to be really critical in the current environment. That said, we also realize that there's an opportunity to scale some best-in-class recycling facilities and kind of across the recycling supply chain in North America. And so we're in the midst of building and have actually made a few investments in a private equity fund called Closed Loop Leadership Fund, where we're acquiring those facilities. So we've acquired a company called Balcones Resources in Texas and a company called Single Stream Recyclers in Florida, and are helping scale what we think are best-in-class recycling facilities that are going to improve how our recycling system works. And we've actually just announced a couple of major investments, both from Microsoft and Nestle, into that fund as well. So that rounds out the funds. And then we have our Center for Circular Economy, which I can talk about if you want.
Of course, we want to talk about it. So the closed loop fund and the sort of expansion into actually acquiring the different recycling centers, which is incredible. I've seen a lot of balconies in the news lately.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And they're based in Texas, right?
They're in Austin, though they operate kind of in multiple markets in Texas and Northwest Arkansas. And now they're actually Single Stream Recyclers, which we acquired, is now operating under the Balcones flag. And so the intent is those two companies, which create really clean material that can go back into packaging supply chains, they're just some of the best in the country. Those like dream teams are working together, and we intend for them to expand and scale throughout the Southeast.
Amazing. That's really cool. I should also mention and bring up that you were my first call when we had the opportunity to charter the ship that we took out into the Atlantic Gyre last year.
Yeah, I said do it.
We ran the Ocean Plastic Leadership Summit in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, had 165 executives with us. Before all this happened, it was like a pretty massive bet that we took as a company. At the time, we were doing a lot of climate change work and wildlife conservation work. And I had just gone to Delhi and gotten blown away after doing a landfill tour, walking in really through the Delhi landfills and just
it's crazy.
Experiencing firsthand the waste there. And I came back like, I know we got to do something in plastics. We found this ship. I called Bridget up and I was like, do you think this is a good idea? Because we're kind of betting the company on it. And you were like, I think it's a great idea.
Thank God it worked out.
13 months, this is like a year and a half ago, but yeah, we ran like hell for 13 months and got some of the top organizations, and Bridget was with us out there, and super grateful for that. And Bridget's been like one of our absolutely most trusted advisors, and why I reached out to you and I was thinking, who should we have on our first ever SoulBuffalo Earth Report live? And here we are.
Well, no, it's amazing. It's been a journey over the last year, and a very interesting time to be in this space, given that a few things have changed in the world in the last year since our journey to sea. And that said, I met some really interesting people out on that trip, both folks from advocacy groups who I hadn't connected with before, who we now work all the time with. And then Clorox is a great example of a company that I met out there who are now was one of the first companies to launch with Algramo, one of our portfolio companies, on a refill model in the US. So all kinds of good machinations that came out of that.
That's amazing. Well, why don't we dig in on that? And let's talk about Clorox. I know Colgate was a part of that as well, and Algramo. But maybe to start, maybe we could just talk about reuse and refill and how that fits in, generally to the solution set for plastic waste.
Yeah. So just our orientation on this is that these supply chains are complex and they are entrenched, meaning that there are large linear supply chains based on very large companies and structures kind of along the way that leverage raw materials, utilize those materials in products and packaging, et cetera, and then they go into a landfill or incineration by and large. That's a significant part of the linear supply chain. And so what we're trying to do is break that linear supply chain, and ultimately at scale, we think circular supply chains make more economic sense. I mean, we're throwing billions of dollars of precious materials into landfills or incinerators or even worse places every year. And we're spending lots of money doing that. So it's kind of crazy when you actually think about it, but we're entrenched in the system that we've built out for many years. And so in order to solve to that, there are kind of many interventions, from the materials that you use to how you deliver products to the technologies that recover those products, et cetera, and the infrastructure around that you need to solve in order to successfully kind of move that giant ship in a different direction. And so we don't think there's any silver bullet. There's no one thing that anyone can do to go ahead and fix that real quick. But we think there's kind of a whole suite of solutions that will slowly turn that ship around. And reuse and refill is something that is clearly not a new concept. It's something that's been around for a long time.
Since milkmen.
Since milkmen, or probably before milkmen. we credit the milk people, but but there's certainly a lot of history before that job came into fruition. So it's definitely been around, but we have built over the last 50 years in the Industrial Revolution, more convenience and therefore more single use into people's lives, and everybody's lives have kind of changed around that. So I'm not advocating to go backwards in time and do something that we did a long time ago, but how do we create contemporary business models and leverage the technology that exists today to encourage and create almost a better consumer experience and more efficient supply chains, more cost-effective ways to buy product without the waste. And that's where kind of new world order reuse and refill models, I think, make a ton of sense.
So yeah, Terracycle has their loop, which I think is absolutely, starting to get a lot of traction in a lot of different places. And just for people who don't know about that, you essentially have like your Axe deodorant, and it's in a refillable container that you send back and you get and basically refill when you're finished with it, or a Haagen-Dazs ice cream that's made of aluminum that you take back when you're done. So you're not just consistently having, stuff to throw away at the end of the day. So, and anybody that wants to check out Loop, you can check out Terracycle's website. Tom Zacky's on our advisory board for the Ocean Plastic Leadership Network. He's their CEO. They're doing amazing work, but Algramo is a little bit different. We'd love to hear, and serving a different audience as well. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, and so much credit to Tom and to Loop team for getting that off the ground. I mean, I do think that they were the first to market and have built a really interesting marketplace into exactly what I said of how do you use kind of contemporary tools, and certainly e-commerce, and I know now they're moving, kind of expanding into brick and mortar, but that's what they're doing. They're leveraging kind of the new world order and frankly the new way that people are shopping post-COVID to reduce waste and add convenience to people's lives. So that's, I think, a really great model. Algramo is a little bit different. So Algramo has essentially these vending machines or mobile units that can live in different places that are, the way that they're thinking about it is how do we bring the product to the consumer in the places that they're using them. So a really great example of that is in New York City, people, they have to often go down to a laundromat to do their laundry. And it can be a lot of effort to bring kind of a large, bulky laundry container. So they'll, put a little bit into a water bottle, like an old PET water bottle of their laundry detergent, use it and throw that away, which is creating more waste. And, they're still lugging big jugs of things from the grocery store. So Algramo is this smart packaging vending machine where if you were to go into a laundromat, and you could get a package that has an RFID tag embedded into that. And you can purchase as much or as little of that product as you both want and or can afford. So oftentimes when, especially in emerging markets, but this is true everywhere, if you have cash flow challenges and you want to purchase a product, you could buy it in bulk, and over the course of the use of that product, it's cheaper, but it's more expensive up front. So you need that you need the money up front to buy that big container. Otherwise, you can buy smaller amounts on a kind of a daily basis, which is really common in certain markets, which essentially you're getting what Algramo has deemed a poverty tax, where you're getting charged more because you can only pay for a little bit at a time, and overall, that same quantity will cost more. And it's incredibly wasteful, usually with highly unrecyclable, easy to slip through the system packaging. And so Algramo kind of solves a couple things. It makes it more affordable to purchase whatever quantity of a product that you need. And it makes it convenient because it's often bringing kind of the product to the consumer, but through these kind of smart packages that are RFID enabled and connected back to an app that you have, whereby you can actually pay for every time you purchase that product. You're saving money and you're reducing risky waste that is especially problematic in marine environments.
Got it. That's amazing. And so they're scaling the footprints in Chile initially, right?
Yeah. So their founder is in Santiago, and they've grown the company in Santiago in Chile, and they've been partnering with Unilever they've recently announced a partnership with Nestle Purina and their dog food, which is a very bulky item that can be complicated and difficult to move back and forth from the store. So they actually have a mobile unit that's essentially like, speaking of, the milkman, the ice cream person, that's coming to your house, and you can refill that same container. And you're motivated to keep that same container and use it over and over because it's a utility. There's value in that container. And the chip knows that you are using that same container and recognizes you, and then you pay through that app. You can get discounts, et cetera. So there's all kinds of cool opportunities to engage with the consumer. But yeah, so they came from Santiago. Closed Loop Ventures, our venture fund, and several others invested in them a couple of years ago. And we also got the distribution rights to expand them in North America. So we just launched in partnership with Colgate-Palmolive and their soft soap, and with the Clorox brand, with a Clorox bleach product and also Pine Sol. We launched those products into market in New York 2 weeks ago. So it's really exciting to see their expansion. And there are a lot of intentions to grow into markets like Southeast Asia and Europe and beyond.
Where in New York? What part of New York?
In Brooklyn. So we have a few spots in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy, at a laundromat. And then over the coming weeks, there are a couple of local markets that will have Algramo vending machines, and then also the Brooklyn Navy Yard to start. And the goal is to be able to expand into multifamily buildings, so like in the lobby, or the laundry room of a condo facility. But all of these markets are really cool, the ones we're in so far, because they reach a really diverse audience. And we got really excited to invest in Algramo because it's really democratizing the reuse and refill model. It's not meant for a niche audience. And frankly, the very powerful environmental story is kind of third in line in terms of why folks are getting excited about it. And we've seen like ridiculously positive feedback so far in this market, primarily because it's convenient, it's more cost effective, and it's just kind of a cool system where you can track what you're doing, kind of gamified.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. I want to check it out. Is there, so right now, just in New York. Mm-hmm. So if anybody, it's not the kind of thing people can check out outside of.
Just in New York now. And our goal is to really dial in the operations and just make sure it's working as well as possible. And we get the consumer insights about how this model that started in a different marketplace works in this US context, in an urban context, and kind of tweak and dial from there. And then over the next year, grow with more products into more markets. And potentially direct in retail as well. So there's going to be a lot of new applications. And I'll just say that I don't think there's going to be a one-size-fits-all refill model either. I think that, Loop, Algramo, and many other models are going to pop up. And what's really cool is we've seen a very strong market signal coming from lots of different reasons from brands that are eager to try and kind of start testing the different models. And there's older ones like SodaStream, which is in the household. There's things that are in your house. There's things that are away from home. Through our Center for Circular Economy and our Next Gen consortium, we've been testing refillable cup systems in cafes. So all kinds of cool models are going to come, and they might differ by the product and packaging formats.
You're working on lots and lots of cool stuff. And I'm lucky to know a lot of people that Bridget works with as well. And they have their hands full on cool things that they are working on. That's for sure. Well, we got like 12 minutes left, 11 minutes left. Let's talk about the Beyond the Bag initiative, which is it has the potential to be just absolutely transformative. Some of the biggest companies in the world are behind this initiative. Really came together to try to like totally revolutionize how people take their stuff home from stores, for lack of a better word.
And frankly, the future of retail. So you kind of got to go big, and you got to be specific at the same time to really get things done. In my opinion, if you're too broad, it's hard to, you can't boil the ocean. Maybe a bad metaphor. So our approach through our Center for Circular Economy, where we are doing these kind of pre-competitive collaborations, I guess I'll just point out our intent is to be very strategic and scalable, but very executional. So it's not just about like getting brands together to talk about, the change we're trying to create and set some goals around that. It's really, how do we actually like land that change and how do we make it happen? And so our first consortium that we launched a few years ago, just for context, which I just mentioned, is the Next Gen Consortium to solve for the single-use hot and cold coffee cup, with Starbucks, McDonald's, Yum Brands, Coca-Cola, Nestle, Wendy's, and several others. And so we kind of brought together this consortium led by McDonald's and Starbucks to be able to identify kind of system solutions and innovation that can solve for the waste, starting with the cup, but that could really transform across all of their packaging formats. And so the idea, which will be relevant, give me 1 second and I'll get to the beyond the bag, is that if we can test and innovate, identify the cool innovation, oftentimes there's an innovation cliff that happens after that, and then you get like all this really exciting stuff that never goes anywhere. And so our intent is to be able to kind of handhold the innovation that we think are kind of best in class, to scale them, get them to understand how to work with a corporate supply chain, and then make sure that anything that comes out the other end can get through a recovery system, both the perceived and real issues solved to those, because sometimes perception holds things back as much as anything else. And so we've been really pleased with the progress across innovation. Well, I can speak more to that, but we've made a lot of progress there, let's just say. And so about a year and a half ago, we had outreach from the retail industry saying, hey, we have this problem that perhaps you've heard of called the single-use bag, which, everyone feels like, oh, well, why don't you just use paper? Why don't you just use, reusable ones? And the reality is that those have not scaled because there's an inherent ease and value in this single-use bag for a whole host of stakeholders. So we really felt like with some major retailers, who I'll mention in a second, we needed a holistic solution that could drive scale quickly. So we, in partnership with Target, Walmart, CVS, Kroger, and I can tell you that behind the scenes since announcement, we've had a lot of other retailers that have been wanting to join. So, and to expect some more announcements around that. Nice. The retail industry has really come together and rallied around this, because this is like a very visible and very core problem that they have full ownership of. And so they're ready to put the resources in to solve this. And it's been challenging. They just have not been able to create a system that works for consumers and makes them happy, works for municipalities, and has been able to be a better experience than the single-use plastic bag. And so that's the intent, is a 3-year initiative that is starting with a challenge to identify innovation that isn't just meant to be kind of one-to-one material replacement, like now we're using this kind of bag, but just recreating the system of how people move products, as you said, from store or other kind of omnichannel elsewhere to the household. And that might be new technology, it might be reusable models, it might be new materials, but probably some combination of all of them, and then prototyping and scaling them in store over the next 3 years and bringing it to scale.
Game on. Amazing.
Game on. We got it.
So what could beyond the bag look like? Like is there like categorizations of different material, of different types of bags? Like what's in play here?
Yeah. And I encourage folks to go to Google Beyond the Bag, and you can go to the challenge page, which will show the short list. We're partnering with OpenIDEO, who is our partner in NextGen as well. And they're phenomenal, and they've always been our challenge partners. So they actually, if you go to their website, and again, just Google Beyond the Bag and you'll find it, you can see the short list, which includes kind of enabling technologies that may exist in other industries that could kind of shift how people engage at retail. It could include models like we talked about, like a Loop or an Algramo, integrating in with another technology around how you carry those products from retail. And so it might be kind of whole system like that. It might be that somebody can bring their bag back, drop it off somewhere, it gets sanitized, and they get a new bag that's reusable there, so the onus is not on them. Or it might be a new material. And the reality is it's probably some combination of all of those. So I wish I had the answer. If I had the answer, I might win a bunch of money and solve this problem, but unfortunately I don't. So we're really scouring the universe for much smarter people than myself who can come up with those solutions.
There's a lot of smart people out there. So Could be a new material, could be a new complete delivery
Yeah.
system.
I don't think it's
drones, robots, and like,
yeah, robots are in play. All kinds of things are in play. And what's really important is we also have nonprofit organizations who are kind of environmental NGOs that are basically checking us so that we don't create negative consequences somewhere else. So like, we don't want to, find this new material that's really recoverable, but, it uses horrible child labor somewhere. We're thinking, we want folks to make sure that we're thinking about all of the risks and issues that could come up, because new innovation creates new opportunity and it creates new challenges. And so we're trying to take a really systemic approach to it. I don't think it's just going to be a new material. I can't imagine, I don't think there's like some magical, rainbow unicorn material that like turns into candy afterwards. I feel like that's probably...
If there was a magic rainbow unicorn, it'd be tough to get it scaled with existing infrastructure. Like, how do you make all these new products when
exactly
there's no way to produce them?
Exactly. And I think something that's really exciting that we saw with NextGen that we're already starting to see with Beyond the Bag is that it really takes a market signal from these global entities to drive the innovation, both with early stage innovators, but also with suppliers of theirs. So if you're selling them products in the way that you've always done it, that's a pretty easy business. There's no reason to change unless you really have a reason to. And even though some of these companies are huge, they're still a small part of the supply chain for bags. If you think about all the bags out there, it's like all the local restaurants that do takeout. It's, the convenience stores, it's the big players, it's the small players. So no one owns the market there. So the power of these guys coming together is creating a market signal that's big enough that if you are in their supply chain, you want to be part of the solution there so you don't lose your business. And so that's really the power of the market signal being created. And also it's going to drive investment into these solutions because investors need to see, oh, there's going to be a market for this. So I want to invest in this because it's a big opportunity financially.
I think when you talk to a lot of our partners at the OPLN, and a lot of your partners at Close, it all starts with retail. It starts with the consumer who leverages the retailers, right? And the retailers, when they want to make a big change, and it can be hard for them to make a big change because it's so competitive, but they can move mountains in a short amount of time.
It's true. And I think we need to, oftentimes we talk about we need to change consumer behavior. Really, we need to create a better experience for consumers. Like brands and retailers, that's what they do for a living. Let's do it in this category. Let's not ask the consumer to do something that's more arduous. We've been trying that for years. And I know the barriers on me, and I'm, pretty aware of the issues, and I still struggle. So why don't we give the consumer a better experience?
Exactly. I was echoing what you're saying, like trying to be incredibly conscious with everything. It can be next to impossible sometimes, especially, when you're going out and trying to like go to an outdoor eating place in COVID times, and all the local restaurants are only using, single use color or what. It's
hard. It's hard though. Maybe what I'll kind of like late in the conversation point I think that I want to make that I think is relevant and maybe a good takeaway for folks is that in spite of that, and I think that's very true, we face a lot of waste challenges due to kind of our current situation in COVID. None of the big players, the big companies are still at the table and they're still serious about this. We moved the Beyond the Bag initiative and got the funding, significant funding for that. It all happened during COVID when everyone was kind of, there was the volatility was kind of an all-time high in terms of what the future was going to be. All of these companies and these investments that I mentioned earlier from Nestle, from Microsoft, from others, they all happened during COVID times. So nothing slowed down for us. There's a lot of energy behind this. And everybody knows that, as things settle into whatever, kind of status quo happens a year from now, 2 years from now, that this is still going to be a major issue and they can't drop the ball now or they're never going to get to their goals. And that's going to be a hit on them. They're not going to be the leaders of the future.
I think that is an excellent point to end on. It is 11:29 exactly. I'm so grateful, Bridget, for being the guest on the first SoulBuffalo Earth Report live. We are learning a lot about what it means to live broadcast. This is out on LinkedIn or Twitter. I do believe we will have a recording that we can send around. But thank you again. Just can't.
I love it.
Who we are for you in our world, and have fun on your next meeting. We'll talk.
Totally mutual. Thanks. I can't wait to keep the work going with you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Talk soon.